So we got nurses causing injuries to babies? Really? Are we really in that kind of place in life that we're causing harm to children? What did the babies do? What can they do besides cry? You chose to be a nurse. I'm confused.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to AfriPost. I hope wherever you're watching us from, you're having a great time. Now, there are certain things that I think sometimes do happen to expose some of the hidden issues that we have within our systems. For example, there is this story that is coming out from United States that is very devastating. I can tell you that as a parent and as somebody who has really been very, very vocal on issues affecting black people across the world, this news really got me on the bad space. Now, the news I'm talking about is that of Erin Strotman. She's been talked about quite widely right now in American media. She is a nurse who was working at the NICU department, and it was found out that during her tenure, black babies were being fractured in their bones. And this was unexplained because some of them were born with some challenges, but not the bone issues. But then when they were checked, it found out that in as much as sometimes they were fine, it ended up that at the end of the day, they would report that children showed some fractures that were unexplained. So when the hospital did their research, they found out that there was a lady, white lady, who was specifically targeting black babies and breaking their bones. So I wanted to hear reactions from people who also heard of this news. Let's watch.
Hi, my name is Tia. I'm a NICU nurse, and today I'm going to talk about Erin Stratman, the NICU nurse from Henrico Doctors Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, who was just arrested. I do want to put a content warning on this video. We are going to be discussing a nurse who intentionally harmed her patients, which is a sentence that makes me want to vomit. As a human being in the world, I know that there are monsters out there, but as a NICU nurse, I find this unfathomable. So the information that we have about the timeline starts in the summer of 2023, where 4 NICU babies were found to have unexplained fractures, broken bones. There is one of these families that has spoken out and has been on the news, and it's been reported that the mother of the NICU baby was actually a NICU nurse herself, and she reported the fracture to social services because something just wasn't adding up. CPS would send them a letter a year later confirming that the injury was from child abuse by a NICU staff member. Now, it's unclear whether this report to social services is what started the internal investigation back in 2023, but what we do know from the limited amount of information we have is that Erin Stratman was placed on paid leave after the summer of 2023. In the year that Erin Stratman was on leave and not working in this NICU, there were no reports of mysterious fractures or injuries to the babies. However, when she returned in the fall of 2024, 3 more babies were found to have mysterious fractures. In late December, the hospital closed its NICU to admissions so that they could perform an investigation. And then last week, right after the new year, Erin Stratman was terminated and arrested the same day and charged with malicious wounding and child abuse and neglect. Now, police are still investigating. We're getting small updates essentially every few days, but the updates that we're getting are leaning towards these allegations being true. She also had, it would appear, an anonymous co-worker come forth, and they didn't have a lot of good things to say about her character either. One of the things they said, and I'm going to read the quote from the news source that I got it from, was, I was surprised at what she did, but I'm not surprised that it was her. If anyone was to do something crazy, she would have been at the top of the list. See, this is the part where I'm like, because you were told that your coworker was intentionally harming infants, and immediately in your mind you were like, checks out. They said a coworker was harming infants, and you were like, yeah, but it was that Erin girl. Now that's gotta be some kind of giant red flag, right? Because if some person came into my NICU and asked me to point out the coworker that I thought would be most likely to intentionally harm an infant, huh? None of them, not a single name or a face comes to mind, because what the hell? But there's more. There are layers. This anonymous coworker also let us in on another tidbit, which officially the police have not released any details about the infants or the families involved in the case. We don't know their sex, their race, ethnicity in any official capacity. However, what we do know is that this anonymous coworker reported that the majority of the infants who were harmed were Black. Now let's call it what it is, right? The same coworker went on to say that in their interactions, she definitely felt like Aaron was racist. And this is problematic for numerous reasons, but given the fact that healthcare has a history of systemic and overt racism, coupled with the fact that Black infants have over two times the mortality rate of white infants already, the distrust in the medical community has been earned. As NICU nurses, this is really important, so please take what I'm about to say very seriously. I know sometimes it can be frustrating to feel like parents don't trust you. It always comes back to, I'm a NICU nurse, I'm here to help you, I'm here to take care of your baby, I want to help your baby, that's why I got into this job. But nurses like Aaron Stratman are a glaring example as to why there's distrust in the medical community. And we really need to come into ourselves and think about that the next time we're feeling frustrated, because we don't feel like we have the full trust of families that we're taking care of. It's not about us. As for the hospital, they have a lot to answer for. I have a lot of questions. Why did they put Aaron Stratman on paid leave for a year and then bring her back if they already suspected her of harming babies? That feels complicit to me, honestly. We know that Aaron Stratman's next court date is in late March. She does not have any bail set, and I will be looking for updates.
So we got nurses causing injuries to babies? Really? Are we really in that kind of place in life that we're causing harm to children? What did the babies do? What can they do besides cry? You chose to be a nurse. I'm confused. So we have a nurse who needs to be a former nurse at this point out of Virginia. Erin Elizabeth Stratman. It be them people with them three names. They always need to be watched. They always need to be watched. So this woman decided back in the summer of 2023 that she was going to start causing injuries to children. So they had 4 babies that had unexplained injuries, and they recorded it for the record because they didn't understand why they had 4 babies who had fractures in their NICU. So then we roll on to November, December timeframe 2023, and there are 3 additional babies that have unexplained fractures. What? Everybody should have been dismissed when you had 4, because 4 was too many, but we let it go on to 3 additional children. Okay, so we had 7 in the span of the summertime to December. We got 7 babies with unexplained fractures. Okay. In December of 2024, they shut everything down so they can investigate, and they arrested her on January the 3rd. Now, these people back when I was talking about Terrence T. Howard, on their life support, I could not imagine a nurse doing that. I could not believe doctors, those people can be off their rocker as well. 7 babies? What did the 7 babies do to this woman? How do you explain that to me? 7 babies. Yeah, it don't matter what your job title is. You can cause harm to people. And clearly that was her goal. 7 babies? Now imagine if that was your baby. Fresh out the hospital with a fracture. They come clearly out the birth canal with no fractures, but they leaving with fractures. Yeah. Virginia, y'all have permission to go and toss this one to the side. Just go on and to the water. What in the world? Babies And you took the time out to be educated to be a nurse, and you are causing fractures on babies. Like, you got to go through a special process to even work with the babies, because not everybody got this skill. And you got qualified and certified. And you, bye.
You know, I've told you guys a lot of fucked up stories on this page, but this one is particularly fucked.
When people see stories like this and they talk about how heartbroken they are, I don't get heartbroken. I get angry. Because as a person who was born prematurely, as a person who was abandoned by their mother, luckily I had someone there that cared about. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be heartbroken, but there should be more anger than anything, because this is still happening in real time today. Lord knows how much she's actually gotten away with before this was discovered. Imagine you being 3 times more likely to unalive on the table giving birth, only for said child to then be tortured. Why would I bring a child here?
This 26-year-old monster, Erin Elizabeth Ann Stratman from Virginia, was arrested on malicious wounding and felony child abuse as she was going around the NICU breaking the bones of black babies. I cannot make this up. As if black women didn't have enough to worry about when giving birth. In 2021 alone, the maternal mortality rate for non-Hispanic black women in the U.S. was 69.9 deaths per 100,000 live births. This is nearly 3 times the rate of non-Hispanic white women. Studies say some of the contributing factors to this are the cumulative physiological effects of chronic stress. Nobody's disrespected more than black women in this country. Nobody has more obstacles and barriers to face in this country, to overcome in this country, than black women. But I dare to say that the number one reason is because of racial bias in healthcare. So apparently what happened is that these young babies were having unexplained fractures, so the hospital increased surveillance, and the surveillance systems found her breaking the bones of these babies. Now, typically babies that are in NICU are already fighting for dear life, and then you've got monsters like this that are going out there and deliberately, maliciously causing harm. I personally spent 10 years in prison, and I can assure you it will not be nice to her.
Let's talk about the case of Erin Stratman, who is charged with malicious wounding of a child and felony child abuse as she worked in the NICU as a nurse. From the perspective of an emergency room nurse. I'm going to say it now before I go any further, but this is a huge trigger warning to this story as it does involve abuse of children. Erin Stratman is 26 years old and, according to the Board of Nursing, received her nursing license that is still currently active in May of 2019. It is unclear when she first actually accepted her position, but she ended up working at Henrico Doctors Hospital in Virginia. This case is just literally at the tip of the iceberg, if you ask me, but it involves multiple children that were born premature and had prolonged stays in the NICU where she worked. The investigation was started around November of 2024 when a father had concerns that he had received notification that one of his premature twin babies had received a tibia fracture during his stay in the NICU. Premature babies unfortunately do suffer breaks from time to time due to the fact that their bones are very, very, very fragile. However, this baby that I will not name suffered a tibia fracture, which is one of the longer bones in your leg. This, rightfully so, caused huge red flags for the parents as they were caring for their other twin. They went up the chain to the hospital to file an official complaint so that an investigation could ensue, which it did. Prior to this case being investigated, there were former complaints or at least documentation of at least 4 other babies in the summer of 2023 that had also had unexplained fractures occur. Why in God's name this wasn't investigated at that time, I will never understand. Because these parents filed a former complaint, there was a huge case brought forward and official investigation started. This meant that this NICU then went on a lockdown. It had major changes to the security of it, to include that there was 24/7 live streaming within the department. In the time frame of late November and December of 2024, there was an estimated 3 other babies that were harmed during this time. The case at this time that's being investigated involves 7 babies. As we all know, once you uncover those, there are multiple more, most likely. Henrico Doctors Hospital actually put a stop to accepting new NICU babies, so anybody that was born there that needed a NICU stay was transferred out, and they closed their doors to accepting new babies in the NICU at this time. One of the cases that's being investigated involves a NICU baby that had a prolonged stay there that suffered at least 12 fractures during their stay. Let's talk about this from the perspective of an emergency room nurse. Unfortunately, in the ER, we get a lot of child abuse cases. Obviously, once the children are stable enough to do so, because some are not, we will do something that is called a skeletal survey. A skeletal survey involves a certain type of imaging that allows us to look at all of the bones of the children's body, but it will tell us where there are new fractures as well as where there are old. Bones leave a certain indentation when something has been broken, and those stay forever. Personally, having to do skeletal surveys on babies is gut-wrenching because it tells the whole truth. Essentially paints the entire picture of things you don't want to know. I'm assuming at this point that all of these children that were at some point in her care will go back and have skeletal surveys, and that will be a part of her case. She is sitting in jail in Virginia without bond, facing 1 count of malicious injury to a child, which can face up to 20 years, as well as felony child abuse, which can face up to 10 years. But I'm sure as this case goes on and more is investigated, they will find out that there are more children that she has put her hands on, and those years will just go up. I think all of us can completely agree as to where Erin should spend the rest of her life, which is never being able to step foot out of a prison, as well as never being able to see the day of light again.
Just in case you thought systemic racism wasn't a thing, let's take a look at this story of a Caucasian nurse who's been breaking the bones of NICU infants. Yes, you heard that right, NICU infants. While they're in the NICU, trying to hold on for dear life, grow, put on some weight, bond with their caregivers, and make it successfully out of there so that they can go on to live their lives. She's trying to end their lives before they even started. And to think that she was granted paid administrative leave just goes to show you how systemic this racism is. If this is not a sign for us to rally up, get our money up, either leave or be our own bosses, and ensure that we're not entrusting the care of our precious little children to people who could potentially want to harm them, I don't know what is. I am livid, I'm sad, I'm heartbroken for the families of those babies, and I hope they get the justice they deserve by her being, yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
Going around the NICU, breaking the bones of black babies.
That's funny. She doesn't look illegal. She doesn't look like she crossed the border illegally, unless it was Canada. And yet here she is, harming babies, children. I guess her name is too long for y'all to, put into some sort of goofy song though, right? You gonna say those babies' names? Because it ain't the first time she did it. This is the time she got caught, but this is not the first time she's done this. So all of you save the babies, protect the babies folk against the illegals. Are you gonna say this woman's name? You gonna plaster her picture all over the place? You gonna go into lives talking about how she's violent towards children? I would hold my breath to see whether you would, but then I'd be dead.
Now, many people have always said that racism and slavery are things of the past and they don't exist today. And this is a classical example that shows you how racism works. You are finding out that a nurse who is qualified comes out and is targeting only black babies to injure them. This is really bad. And I know most nurses have talked about it, and they say that the Hippocratic oath that they take is always just to do good to the patient, and that this lady is one of the worst people out there. And I think when we look at people, because we know we have very, very nut heads outside there, but then why is it that this lady would only target black kids? It is because of something that has been innate in her. She has been taught and she has seen the system allow it to work through that systemic racism still exists. Look at even how the investigations were done on this case. This lady had already been put on a suspended leave when she was being investigated. But then she was brought back and this issue still continued. If this was a black person, what do you think would have happened? If it was a black person targeting white kids, it would be worse. It would be everywhere. And I think we are now able to see that we cannot say that racism or even issues of slavery are things of the past. It is very, very important that we be candid about what's happening in our environment and how we can address them. Because if we continue keeping quiet and putting everything under the table, we will not address this main issue that is continuing to affect our society. This lady was just 26 years old. And if you thought she was someone who is very old, you are totally wrong. It is a 26-year-old lady who is a Gen Z who thinks that it is not good for black babies to survive out of the harsh conditions that they are in. And this really gives you the mindset of white America as it is. It is very necessary that we talk about these issues quite openly, and I think it is very unfortunate, and this lady should get the harshest punishment that she can ever get. Systemic racism in America manifests through policies, practices, and societal norms that perpetuate racial disparities. In the criminal justice system, black Americans are incarcerated at higher rates, which is 5 times higher than their white counterparts, highlighting the significant racial bias in sentencing and policing practices. Studies have shown that black men are more likely to be stopped by police and receive harsher sentences for similar crimes, contributing to the school-to-prison pipeline, where black students are disproportionately disciplined and exposed to law enforcement early in life. Economically, systemic racism is evident in the wealth gap, where black families hold just a fraction of wealth compared to white families, largely due to historical discrimination practices like redlining, which limited home ownership opportunities for black Americans, a key source of generational wealth. The legacy of these practices continue to affect property values and access to credit in black communities. Another thing is the educational disparities that reflect systemic racism in America. Black students often attend underfunded schools due to local property tax-based funding models, which correlate with housing segregation. This leads to inequalities in educational resources and outcomes, with black students less likely to have access to advanced courses like AP or gifted programs. Health outcomes are other clear indicators. Black Americans have higher rates of chronic conditions like diabetes and heart diseases linked to both environmental racism, where minority neighborhoods have higher exposure to pollutants, and systemic barriers in health access and equality. Even in employment, despite similar qualifications, black job applicants with white-sounding names receive more callbacks than those with black-sounding names, indicating implicit biases in hiring. These examples collectively illustrate the existing systemic racism in America. So the case of Erin Stroutman is not just something that is out of the blues. It shows you how American system has worked over the years and has been shaped over the years in such a way that it will always favor white people. And that is why even a young girl nurse like this one can just come out and start targeting people that she thinks do not deserve a chance at life. If they ever survive, they will continue having fractures in their bodies. This is really bad, and I think she's going to get her day in court, and many people have talked against it, and I like how most of them have talked about it in this issue. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this. And if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.